They bowed their heads, let the tears flow for a minute's silence in the courtroom. The powerful moment in memory of Hannah Maguire, whose partner is waiting to be sentenced for her murder. We remember Hannah today and all of those lost to this horrific crime, as the Domestic Violence Commissioner shared with Parliament her assessment of how we as a nation are tackling the crisis. Michaela Cronin joins me from Canberra. Commissioner, Hannah is another reminder of why we are fighting so hard to make genuine change.
Absolutely, Ali, and it's very important to remember all of the women and children and families that have been hurt by domestic, family and sexual violence, and to keep them in the front of our minds and our hearts as we do this work.
And look, the sceptic in me worries that this is just another report. It is more words on a paper that won't actually make anyone safer. Is that a valid fear?
Look, Ali, what we've tried very hard to do with this report is to reflect what we've heard from communities, from people who have direct lived experience of domestic, family and sexual violence and the system and the way it is either supporting and working for them or not. And we've looked at what is happening across the country. Our intention is to drive real impact and change.
But look, I mean, you've analysed more than 1,000 recommendations from royal commissions, inquiries and inquests. We know what needs to be done. Why aren't we doing it?
Look, there are areas where we actually are doing it, Ali, and I think one of the things that the Commission has really tried to do is to shine a light on where there is some really good activity and practice going on in communities. And we are not at all where we need to be, but we are not where we were either. We have made some really significant progress. I think one of the reasons we did that piece of work about looking at inquiries, royal commissions, coronial inquests across since 2010 was just to look at what have they all been telling us, and what was very clear is that they're pretty consistent, the recommendations, and that we do know what needs to be done. It is about how we implement change.
And I think one of the biggest problems, right, is that every state and territory is doing its own thing. Will this get everyone on the same page?
So one of the really key benefits of having a national plan is that we've got all of the jurisdictions signed up to work together. Getting them to work together and what the mechanisms are for doing that is what we've really come up with, from working with them and people in communities and organisations, what we think are the priority activities across the next 12 months that will actually help unite people around really common shared priorities.
And I know that you're calling for a national watchdog so that they'll actually oversee that what the states and territories have signed up to, they stick to. But we're seeing significant money being invested. But domestic violence rates, sexual assault and intimate partner homicide rates, they aren't really dropping. Why not?
Look, we're absolutely seeing some of the highest rates of sexual violence that we have in 30 years. Having said that, we are seeing some improvements in intimate partner violence, and we've seen a decrease in homicides over 30 years, but you're right, the last 2 years we've seen an increase, very worrying increase, that is very felt by the communities and the families who have lost people. One of the things that we've called for is that we really need to be having a live action planning process, because things change around us all the time, and how do we keep everybody on the same page? So we are seeing some positive progress. We need to look at that and look at how we scale that up and learn from it across the country, but we've got a long way to go as well.
So I'll just take a few key points then from your report. We need more engagement with men and boys. I wonder then, particularly with men, how much of a role does gambling, alcohol, pornography play in all of this?
So the evidence is pretty clear that gambling and alcohol have a multiplying effect, right? They don't cause violence. We know that. We know that gambling and that people gamble and people drink that don't use violence. But we do know very clearly from the evidence that it has a multiplying impact, and it makes that violence is often worse because of people's addiction to gambling or use of alcohol. And that there are regulations, there are things that governments can put in place that will make a difference and that will reduce harm. That was one of the really clear recommendations to be looking at from the rapid review process last year.
One of the other things you talk about or you highlight is prevention must begin in childhood. Are you still convinced that we can end family violence by 2050?
I had a conversation with one of the people in our lived experience advisory group in the last week, and he reminded me about the way homelessness services across the country have been approaching ending rough sleeping. It's not that it's going to ever completely go away, right? But that what we want to see is for it to be rare, for it to be brief, and for it to be non-recurring. And I do believe that that is possible, that that's an achievable and actually really vital objective for all governments to have. So I think that from all of those inquiries and royal commissions, we do have a lot of very good evidence about what needs to be done. We just need to make choices in the way we implement it to get there.
Well, I know so much work has gone into this report and we know how hard good people are working on it. Let's hope this national plan is the answer. And as always, it's great to talk to you, Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali.